about the two therapies that show much promise, even though the randomized double-blind clinical trials have not been completed yet. But they've shown enough promise that the FDA has actually done an emergency authorization for it, and that's more than just compassionate use now. That's an emergency use authorization. They've also, just now, the FDA has released guidelines on production of it to drug makers. And so if people think that they're just doing Donald Trump's bidding, then they should probably think again, because the FDA, in my opinion, is responsible for the lack of rapid testing in the beginning, because I looked into it, and at the University of North Carolina Biotechnology Center, oh my God, he's floating. He's flying. Say hi.
Hi.
University of North Carolina Biotechnology Center, this company called Biomedomics. I found out they partnered up with a larger pharmaceutical company that is traded publicly, and that's how they sold 500,000 test kits to China in January. Are you stuck? And hey there, thank you so much for joining, my friend. And so Biomedomics developed a rapid antigen test kit that we still haven't gotten off the ground, as far as I can tell. And China and South Korea used it. Now, it has a lower success or a lower reliability rate, but it still allowed them to figure out who had the virus sooner. And to me, that's one of the biggest mistakes that our authorities have done. So if the FDA is who was standing in the way of approval, because Biomedomics was trying to get approval, if the FDA was standing in the way of approval of that, then I don't think the FDA is just doing Trump's bidding. I think that there is a very concerted effort on the part of the establishment, the powers that be, and the media to discredit hydroxychloroquine and chloroquine, originally used for malaria. Now, I've been following it because I've read studies about how it can inhibit a broad spectrum of viruses in vitro, meaning in a test tube. And then I saw, it used to be used for malaria, although malaria, a parasite, has become resistant to it. Excuse me, but it was used for HIV in the 90s. It's relatively cheap. And what that means is it's generic. So FDA just released guidelines about making the compound because it can be made by any drug maker. Therefore, they're not going to make money because they don't have exclusive rights to it. That's a big deal in pharmaceutical arenas. But I just keep seeing, just yesterday there was an article on Bloomberg News talking about the quackery of Trump and the snake oil of hydroxychloroquine, even after the FDA just released guidelines on making the drug. Yeah, exactly. Dallas Buyers Club. I mean, these situations are becoming exposed now, and I feel like the more the media and like the New York Times, Bloomberg News tries to discredit the drug, the more it's backfiring. However, I'm already seeing that posts about this drug are being censored and removed from social media. So I want you to know that I wouldn't steer anyone toward something that had drastic side effects. Hello, Armando. Nice to see you. And so I wouldn't steer anyone toward a drug that had massive side effects. I looked at the side effects, and there are retinal side effects that are rare. And they usually happen with patients who have autoimmune disorders who take the drug long term. Now, chloroquine is a different drug. It's a derivative. Hydroxychloroquine is a derivative that is not as harsh. Chloroquine does have some implications for arrhythmia and which is weakening of the heart muscle. But obviously, if you're going to administer this drug, it is not going to be for long-term use. It has been shown in non-double-blind studies to bring people back from their critical situation where they are being deprived of oxygen by this new virus that is so tricky. And I mentioned on Twitter that there are young people with no pre-existing conditions that have been found dead at home because they're thinking now that the virus is attacking the hemoglobin. And instead of it being like a pneumonia, acute respiratory distress syndrome, it is actually a hypoxia where the hemoglobin, which is supposed to carry the oxygen out to the rest of the body and carry the carbon dioxide from the rest of the body back into the lungs to be breathed out, this hemoglobin is attacked by the new virus and is no longer able to carry the oxygen. And for some reason,